I am your host of Across Generations, Tiffany D. Cross, and this is the only place where you will hear three different perspectives from three distinct generations of Black women, and I'm so thrilled to invite you to this conversation. Hi, everybody. I'm Tiffany Cross, your host of Across Generations. And joining us today is Johnita Mizell. She's a passionate advocate for women's health and a strong voice in the conversation around IVF. Johnita brings her personal experience and deep insight into the challenges many people face. Today, she will share her story and the impacts IVF has had on her life and offer guidance to those as she tells us about her personal experience. We hope you enjoy her story. So I'm a little confused about your story, to be honest. I thought that you were navigating infertility, but now I'm told that's not the case.
That is not the case. First of all, thanks for having me. And hopefully my story inspires and educates women who are considering IVF. I am a single mother by choice. I was a career go-getter, traveled a lot, lived in great places, and really had not given a thought around family planning. Always knew it was somewhere in the cards, but I never got married, and I didn't think that not being married precluded me from being a parent and being a good parent. And with that backdrop, I decided to pursue IVF. And for those who know the IVF process, the first stage is harvesting your eggs. And everyone will advise you who has experienced this to do this, preferably before you turn 40. So at age 38, 39, I went through the IVF process and was able to get a good yield. And to me, that gave me an insurance policy on making decisions about my ability to start a family when it was right for me. So that's how it started out. I wasn't diagnosed with anything, and there's tons of women that do have fertility issues. And let's be clear, there's also tons of men who have fertility issues that often women take the brunt of those complications and challenges. So no, I did not have infertility issues, but I did choose IVF as the appropriate way for my family planning.
And why, for your choice of IVF, why, I'm just curious, not get pregnant the old-fashioned way?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I came up in the South in a Baptist family, and I grew up with both of my parents who are still married to this day. And I had certain values and traditions in my mind about what my family should look like, which is why it took me so long to do this, because I kept waiting for the ability to meet the right person. And that person didn't come along. And I did not want to sacrifice my family unit with a relationship with someone that was not a lifetime commitment, such as marriage. So I'm heterosexual and I date men, and I wanted the man in my daughter's life, in my children's lives, to be their father and my husband. And if that wasn't going to be the case, I did not want to sacrifice or potentially bring in a co-parenting situation, which for some people it works. I just didn't think that was going to work for me. So it was kind of an all or nothing type of scenario for myself. So I did decide to use an anonymous donor. And for the benefit of my daughter, who will be 3 in December, I did choose a donor who will allow her, once she's an adult, to make the decision if she wants to reach out to him.
And the donor was receptive to that as well?
The donor is receptive to that, although I do not know him.
Was that important to you?
It was important to give my child, my to-be child, that choice. Yes, that was very important to me, because I'm sure she will have questions that I'm not sure I have all the answers to right now, and it probably will not be articulated very well when she does ask questions, but we'll figure it out together. Like I said, she's almost 3 now, so she doesn't have any questions. Mommy is her world, and that's enough right now, which is great. But yes, the anonymous donor process is a process that is very well respected by fertility specialists. There are several sperm banks that are available on market where you can look at the health history of the donor. You can see what his interests are. You can see pictures of him as a child, and you can really craft and figure out what's right for you. It is a very overwhelming process. I think it's even more difficult than finding a spouse. In the sense that you really never have an opportunity to talk to the person. So you're just reading their essays, you're listening to their voice, you're looking through their health records, and really trying to make a determination. First, for me, it was biological, right? I'm a chemist by training, so I do understand genetics to some degree and making sure that I was selecting the right pool of donors that was right for my blood type. I wanted her to have the same blood type as me. And there was a lot of technical factors that went into screening donors. And then I started looking at pictures, and then I started looking at hobbies and athleticism and arts and things and hobbies that they have. And just to see if this is someone that I think A, would be a good person and a decent human being and a contributor to society. And secondly, if this is someone that I think my daughter would be proud to call her donor if she ever took the opportunity to meet him.
Hmm. So when you say things like their hobbies and what things that you wanted your daughter to have, I just wonder, because some of it, I totally get your point around wanting to know, what kind of person your donor is. I wonder, some of it sounds like a bit of like genetic engineering almost,
Yes.
like with the blood type. How much of that was a consideration
Yeah,
for
so
you?
there is a fine line for that. I do know women who went through a donor search process and they only went by looks. And that was not my first criteria. The reason for the blood type, for example, is that if she ever needed blood or bone marrow or anything like that, I want it to be a resource for her. And the only way to genetically ensure that is by selecting a donor who also has the same blood type as I do. So there's only the option of the offspring having the donor, I'm sorry, of the blood type that the two parents have, the two pools of genes have. And so that was a very practical piece. I mean, I'm also a mother who saved my placenta and stem cells because I think that modern
Mm,
science will have advanced so much that when she may need something, if she may need something, and we can talk about that later in our conversation because she has had some health challenges, we are easily able to find the resources for her, and I don't have to track down this person who wants to remain anonymous. So there were some very practical things like hair color, eye color, hair texture, skin complexion. I did not care about. I wanted a healthy baby, and doing this past the age of 45 was my biggest concern. And everything
yeah.
else was just a decision on the periphery. The hobbies was more of, is this a well-rounded person? Is this someone who would be interesting to know and everything like that? Because I do believe there are certain things that are nature specific and there are certain things that are nurture specific. So I did look for someone who had a wide variety of hobbies. This particular donor happened to be a college athlete. I ran track in high school, so we had that in common. This person also had a strong academic record, and those records are available with most sperm banks. And I also had a strong academic background and record. And so I sort of looked at this search as if I were looking for a mate, these would be things I'd want to find in a partner, right? So I tried to mirror that as much as I could. My daughter happens to look just like my mother. She's very
Mm.
fair skinned with bright blue eyes. And I have to say in public a lot, come with mommy, because I know everyone's wondering. And that is something, and everyone, let's say, she stops traffic sometimes because people of all types stop and remark about her eyes, her eye color. They're very, very stark blue. And that is a recessive gene that had to come from both parents. So it's not about
Mm-hmm.
design. If you understand genetics, it is the contribution of both parents that really makes the child. So no matter what your
Yeah.
donor has, there's no guarantee that your offspring and your child is going to have it. So you are rolling the dice. And there are things way deep in the gene pool that can show up.
Right. Yeah. So, IVF is very expensive.
Yes.
It costs between $40,000 and $62,000.
Hmm.
That's according to the clinic, the CCRM fertility clinic.
Sure.
Um, if you don't mind me asking, how did you pay for this? Did
Yeah,
you use
sure.
health insurance, or is this you said you did use health insurance?
No, I did not. So when
Okay.
I did this, I'll be 50 next month. So when I did this, I was closer to 39. So over 10 years ago, it was not a thing for insurance to pick up the cost of any fertility treatments at that time. And I'm not sure if I would have qualified either because I had not been diagnosed with any issues with fertility per se. So one of the things that made it affordable for me is the egg. I separated the egg harvesting from the actual embryo fertilization and the actual transfer of the embryo back into my body. So when you split it up, it's a little easier to manage the finances of it. So this was over 10 years ago, but my egg harvesting process cost a little over $10,000 at the time. And I was able, and there are payment plans that most of these fertility clinics have. They take credit cards. I pieced it all together. I am a Wall Street executive, so I did get like year-end bonuses, and that did help fund my specific first stage, which was the egg harvesting. And then the egg stayed on ice for over, 5, 6 years. And it wasn't until I was ready to pull the trigger that another series of bills and expenses came with that. So that is a way that you
Mm,
can think about making it a little more manageable if you split it up in sections. But some families prefer to do it all at one time. I did read in my research that the most fertile time to harvest your eggs is in your 20s. So I've already started thinking about how to save for my daughter and giving her that gift at age 25 or so of that insurance of just knowing she has eggs on ice if for some reason there are any problems when she decides to start a family. So that is how I managed it. But now there are fintechs that support women's health that have programs to help fund this. As you mentioned, insurance companies now have it. Employers do have that as an incentive to attract more female employees when they are able to cover some, if not all, of the cost of IVF, which is really special, spectacular. And I'm very proud that our country has advanced enough, to take that consideration for women who need the
yeah.
support.
Talk to me a little more about saving the placenta, because I've heard that, but to be honest with you, I don't really know what that is, what it means to do. I mean, I know what the placenta is, obviously, but I don't understand the logic or science behind saving the
I'll
placenta.
try my best. So the placenta is the lifeline to the baby from the mother in utero. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, that's how the child is fed through the placenta. So whatever you're eating, they're eating. Whatever you're drinking, they're drinking, which is why most people recommend no caffeine, no alcohol, those types of things, because everything that you're putting into your body, the baby has exposure to, right? So that is where the first cells are developed and are grown, and that is the lifeline to the baby. So saving the placenta gives you access to stem cells that are basically the building blocks of the rest of the baby's body. So the stem cells are kind of the first cells, and ultimately, stem cells can be used and manipulated to grow outside of the body if, in fact, there is need for them. So, for example, you can take a stem cell and harvest it outside of the body and create the cells you need to help cure or help aid in the medicine for a person. The biggest thing I can think about are like if you need red blood cells or white blood cells, if you have some deficiency in producing those from your bone marrow, you can use and you can utilize stem cells for that. So just look at them as the building blocks of the rest of the human body, and that science will allow us to manipulate them in a way outside of the body to grow and develop to help cure or help provide medicine, additional assistance to help with some diseases. So I can imagine someone with a blood disorder could use their stem cells to create healthier blood cells and they can be re-injected into the body.
Okay. And you mentioned your daughter's having some health challenges, sadly.
Yeah. So in late February, she woke up one day and she couldn't walk. And she
Mm.
asked me to help her walk. And she had been walking for over a year at this point. And I took her to her pediatrician, and I thought it was a balance issue with her ears. She'd had a lot of ear infections as a baby. And we went to the pediatrician. She checked her ears, and we ended up having to put tubes in her ears to help her ears drain properly so she wouldn't get so many frequent infections. And the tubes looked fine. So she looked at her gait, and then she sent us to a children's hospital nearby for x rays. And the x rays came back normal. And that's when your heart just dropped because all of the easy answers have now been eliminated. And now you're facing
Mm-hmm.
MRI, staying over in the ER, trying to figure out and diagnose what is wrong with her. Come to find out, she had a tumor the size of a tennis ball growing on her spine, and
Oh my
it ended
God.
up being cancer. And the pressure from the tumor was pressing on her spinal cord. So our first issue was to relieve that pressure from her spinal cord so that her spinal column wouldn't be compromised. And the MRI showed the spinal column, kind of almost like a C, and it was already indenting, giving into the pressure of the tumor. If they didn't remove the tumor, she would have been in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Um, and thankfully, they had a very talented neurosurgeon. And I will shout out Nemours Children's Hospital. We live in Delaware. And this neurosurgeon removed the pressure, removed the tumor. And it was like, whew, okay, great. So then the doctors have to assess the tumor, see what it is and everything. And it's a rare juvenile cancer called LCH, Langerhans cell histiocytosis. LCH for short is an overgrowth of white blood cells. And it's a very rare condition. So 5 to 6 children out of a million get it a year here in the United States. Thankfully, depending on where it is, it's absolutely curable. And because it's not in any of her vital organs, as scary as it sounds that it's in her spine, and we also found it in her lungs, it's not in her heart, it's not in
Mm.
her kidney, it's not in her liver, or any vital organs that would prevent us from getting to a complete eradication of this disease from her body. So we have been undergoing chemotherapy since March, and it's been a long journey. As a single parent, it's hard raising a kid, period.
Yes. Yes.
And now dealing with a child who has a very specific diagnosis. And it's so interesting. I'm a woman of faith, so I believe God brought me to Delaware. I am a COVID refugee from Manhattan. I was living in the city, living in Harlem, Harlem till I die, lived there since I graduated from undergrad, and left because of the pandemic and the density of the population in New York City. And once I found out I was pregnant, I just wanted more space for, to cocoon, to grow my baby healthy and not deal with the COVID craziness that was going on during the pandemic. And it brought me to Delaware. It was a close proximity to New York. I have family here. And then my parents are in Virginia, so we were closer. And quite honestly, I'm a financial services professional, so the tax code here is very amenable. And the cost of living is a little cheaper than New York. So, for all those reasons, I said, this is where I'm going to be. And come to find out, I needed to be here anyway because of the diagnosis we would get several years later. She's doing great. On Monday, we'll start round 11. We're closer to the end
Wow.
than the beginning. And my first question, and I'm sure everyone who listens to this podcast will ask, well, did she get it because of IVF or did she get it because of the donor? And I am very, very certain from speaking to genetic specialists that this is kind of a random occurrence. This has nothing to do with
Mm,
genetics. It has nothing to do with the quality of the donor or the quality of my eggs. And I'm very grateful for that because as a mother, you're thinking, could I have prevented this? Could I have done something different and better? That's not the case at all. This is just our walk. And our test is going to be our testimony because she's already showing interest in science and math and playing doctor. And she talks about becoming a doctor. And maybe that this whole experience sparks something in her as an adult to want to be helpful to people who suffer from such diseases or to even be, a doctor who helps heal young children. But in any event, I am able to talk about her strength and her resiliency as a 2 year old. She just turned 2 in December. We were diagnosed in early March, and she didn't even have the language to describe what was happening to her body. And I think that this experience has pulled out of both of us a strength and a skill set that a lot of people never build, the muscle for to survive, but not just survive, but to thrive. And in fact, I've been journaling our whole health journey because I want her to know what a fighter she is. And the irony is that
mm-hmm.
I used to call her my warrior or my warrior princess. I didn't know what if I was having a boy or girl. So I was like, this is just my warrior princess because I had this baby at 47. We already beat the odds. And then to
Mm-hmm.
now have another chapter of our life where we're beating the odds again is really remarkable.
Yeah, and thank God that your daughter is doing well and
Yes.
in true Black woman spirit, a fighter. So we continue to lift you and her in prayer.
Thank you.
So my producers tell me that you're trying to have another baby. Is that right?
Yes, she and I talk about a sibling. I would love to give her a little brother, and science allows that to happen. So, one thing about IVF that your listeners should know is that there's a definite math equation with IVF, and it starts with the number of eggs you're able to have harvested. I was fortunate enough to have 20 plus eggs, harvested. The highest quality were kept. So that took my number from 24 to 14. And they were on ice for several years. Once you decide on a donor or you have a partner that you want to fertilize the eggs with, they have to thaw out the eggs. There's always a chance every egg won't make the thaw. Okay, so say you go from 14 to 12, and then you fertilize the eggs and they may not. So each step of the process, you may lose a few. And so once I got done with my process, like I said, I started with 14. They froze 8 in one container and 6 in another. So he said, how many do you want to thaw out? I said, let's do the 8. So I had 8 eggs. We lost 1 to thawing. That left 7. We fertilized 7 and we lost 2 after that. So now I'm down to 5. And I said, let's put 2 in because I would have loved to have just gotten it all done in one pregnancy. And I did not, I only carried 1 child. Okay. I don't know what happened to the other one. I can't explain that scientifically, and neither could my doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So then I now have 2 embryos left out of that original 8 eggs. So the math is very important to understand. So for those who harvest 3 eggs, 4 eggs, 5 eggs, anything single digits, and you want more than 1 child, I recommend that you do another round of harvesting. So now I have 6 eggs left on ice. And the sperm bank also allows you to report a live birth. And that live birth gives you priority over the donor so that if you want another sperm sample, you get top billing. for that available sperm donor, since you already have a live child, and you want to have the kids be full biological siblings. So I have that option as well. And then you can tell the sex of a child by the fifth day. It's called a zygote, and that's a fertilized egg. So it goes from fertilized egg to a zygote. And there's a 3 day and a 5 day. 3 day, you don't know the sex of the child, but by the fifth day, in the heater, whatever they're incubating them in, by the fifth day, you can tell the sex of the child. So I'm hoping that there's a boy in store for us, because I'd like to have the experience of mothering a daughter and a son. And I think London, which is my daughter's name, will be an excellent big sister. I've checked in with my obstetrician, and I said, okay, my age, what are the chances? And he thinks I still have 2 years left. So it is my hope that and there's enough, medicine and hormones to trick your uterus in thinking it's still 25 years old, which is a good thing. And then you have all the hormone shots that you have to take, which isn't the most pleasant piece of it. But I learned to give myself my own shots. I learned to put myself on a regimen, and I was very serious about it, because you're spending so much money. And not only are you spending so much money, but you're spending so much emotional capital in doing this that you can't help but take it seriously. So the goal is to get London through chemo and have her ring the bell, because she's cancer free, and have that stress off of us, because stress isn't good for pregnancy, as you can probably imagine, and then give it a shot and see what happens.
So some of the risks of having babies in your 50s include preeclampsia, as you know, gestational diabetes, and ectopic pregnancy. Are you nervous about any of those things, or you just are like, yeah.
So because here's the thing. I went through all of that the first time with my first pregnancy without any complications. It's just like God said, it's your time. And I think we all can relate to a time in our lives where everything just felt right. I had no stress. Remember, we were in the middle of COVID, so it was quiet and calm. I was on my Peloton every day, until they told me to stop working out, which I got really annoyed about. And at the end of the day, no preeclampsia, no high blood pressure, no complications. And with IVF children, there is a very specific protocol of scans to making sure the baby is growing in an appropriate range, making sure the heart is developing appropriately. And there's all these kind of vital checks that they do. And given my age also, I was in the doctor office every month, every 3 weeks, doing scans and making sure everything was okay. And every time, everything was fine. And I learned to stop worrying. And I learned to just put my faith in the process and in my God, and that everything was going to work out exactly as it should be. And going through the IVF process is a humbling experience. It's one that I just can't overemphasize the emotional toll. So what I did was I cleaned out my favorites list in terms of who I let into the journey, into the process. And we've all heard this term of dream builders versus people who kill dreams. I had dream builders around me, and that was my village, who called, who checked on me, who sent words of inspiration, who just, came and sat with me just to watch some Netflix and eat peanut butter, because that was my big thing while I was pregnant. And all that negative stuff that we all are exposed to, I let it go. There are people I didn't speak to for over a year, just because I did not want that energy around me and my baby. So I really did just cocoon. And I think that really helped in terms of my stress levels, in terms of my ability to carry safely, and also to just generate a healthy child.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us, Johnita. And we're definitely happy that your baby girl is doing well, and wishing you all the best in your upcoming pregnancy. We'll speak it into existence, and we'll continue to lift you and your family in prayer. I really thank you for trusting across generations with your story.
Thank you. Thank you.